namely the Kadambakula by Moraes. Already in the beginning lecture or the inauguration, Rajaram Hegde, Professor Rajaram Hegde has already mentioned a lot about the book. So everybody knows, but just for the sake of the students who are here from the Maharani College, I am showing this is the book. Kadambakula Revisited. Revisiting the text, that is my context. This book studies in Indian history of the Indian Historical Research Institute, St. Xavier's College, Bombay, series number 5. This is the name of the book, sir, Kadambakula. And he has given a subtitle also to the book. First I am explaining it. The subtitle he has given, George M. Moraes, M.A., A History of Ancient and Medieval Karnataka. That sufficiently says that this subject is not only related to the Kadambas, but anyway, the topic what we have chosen, or the organizers, that is related to the Kadambas only, the early Kadambas. Here is some material on the Kadambas. Therefore, one cannot ignore this book. Whatever the due accomplishments has to be given to this book by Moraes is already been given by many writers, many historians, which we have seen. And this book is given a preface by Reverend H. Harisha, Director of Indian Historical Research Institute, St. Xavier's College, Bombay. This was published, this was given as a thesis for his degree. And in this book, in the introduction part, Moraes, he starts like this. The history of the Kadamba dynasty is the history of one of the most neglected, though in its own days, one of the most influential of the dynasties that ever held sway over the Deccan. I think till today, this holds water. ಈ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಬೆಲೆ ಇದೆ. Because now purposefully I am going a little bit away from my topic, which is also a part of my topic where Dr. Rajaram Hegde left. I am starting from there. When we talk about the history of South India, invariably we will talk about the Cholas. If you go to any library, including this great library, you will get n number of books on the Cholas, let it be there, or any other dynasties of South India. The narration becomes such that I am questioning the narration, because that is the purpose of me standing here, that almost like the 1,000 years of the first millennia of Common Era is written and rewritten in those terms only. Those terms means in the terms of keeping the Cholas at the center. I have a very high level of objection as a student of history for this approach. That doesn't mean that Cholas have not contributed anything. Cholas have contributed immensely to the Indian history. Definitely, we all know that. But while doing that, I think we are not playing the grounds properly. If anybody has any question after this, I am very happy to answer, or even after the session also, I'm here. Because this has been my research of the so-called historiography from so many years. Why ಚೋಳರ ಪ್ರಭುತ್ವವೇ ದಕ್ಷಿಣ ಭಾರತದ ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಪ್ರಭುತ್ವ ಅನ್ನುವ ನೆರೇಷನನ್ನು ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಸಂಶೋಧಕನಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಗೆ. ಕಾರಣ ಏನು ಅಂದರೆ, the reason given, we all know that belongs to that is DC period. Most of the historians from the Tamil land, they will say that. Many scholars, including B.G.L. Swami and others, they will not agree to that fact. They bring the Cholas to the 8th century, 9th century. That means, bringing my question back to the early Kadambas, then who were dominating the first 500 or 600 years or 700 years of the South Indian history, if it were not Cholas, according to my own proposition, or as told by other scholars. So, I am reading this statement of Moraes, that his guide of Harisha, in this context. Most neglected, though its own days, is one of the most influential. How it is influential? If you read the writings written by our own previous historians, I'm not talking about the archaeological reports, the final, whatever you call the history books. Normally they highlight the Chalukyas, different Chalukya branches. They highlight the Rashtrakutas, that is all fantastic. But when it comes to the Kadambas, a kind of, I don't know in English what they say, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತಗ್ಗಿದ ದನಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡುವುದು, if I can tell it in Kannada. A kind of talking in a very lower tone happens while we read the writings written by many of the historians, whosoever names are mentioned here also. If you read them, except for Panchamukhi's book, when we read, for example, you read Surnath Kamath. Sri Kamath, he mentions definitely the contribution of the Kadambas, but while talking, it appears that it is one of the minor dynasties of Karnataka, also South India. My question, my humble submission to the August gathering is that, is it so? ಕದಂಬರು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಅಥವಾ ದಕ್ಷಿಣ ಭಾರತದ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ರಾಜಮನೆತನವೇ, ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ರಾಜಮನೆತನವೇ? ಈ ವಿಷಯ ಮೊದಲು ಸೆಟ್ಲ್ ಆಗದೆ, ಯು ಕಾಂಟ್ play an equal game intellectually in the field of romance, what you call the archaeological romance. My question is, how do you place the different major or minor dynasties of South India in writing Indian history? This is question number one. Because my book is, my thesis is, or my presentation is not explaining each and every chapter of Moraes. It is revisiting the Kadambakula. The title given, sir, is revisiting the Kadambakula. While he is telling that it is a neglected chapter, I agree with the author. Then I am presenting to you, then if it is so, then why not so much of importance has not been given to the Kadambas as much it should have been given at the national level or at the state level while writing the history. This is what my submission. It's not about you or anybody, sir. Please don't take it in that sense. Second one, while all these scholars, they are talking about the Kadambakula, there are other good great scholars who have written much equally good books which was not mentioned. It is related, it is also material related to the Kadambas which Moraes has not seen. It is recorded by Dr. S. Shrikanta Shastri. Sources of Karnataka History, volume number 1. I didn't get the English original book. This is a Kannada version. It contains many of the documents related to the Kadamba history which was available during the time of Moraes, because this book came just in 1939. Shrikanta Shastri's first volume. This book was published. This reprint, sir. Original English, I'm telling. And a second book, it never saw the day of light. But why Moraes, being such a good student of history, misses the documents which was available to Dr. Shrikanta Shastri? While you are doing the revisiting, this is how you should do it. Third and last point, either the contours, that means the intellectual framework given by Moraes or by any other good historians of the later day, according to me, it, though not purposefully, it is not taking into consideration another aspect of our own Karnataka culture, of our own South Indian culture. That is, for example, if you see this book by Shamba Joshi, that is S.B. Joshi, Karnataka Samskrutiya Purva Pitike, the earlier prelude to Karnataka culture, is a very important book. I never see any of the historians, I'm not talking about the archaeologists because their field of work is different, while talking about the layers of culture that occurred here. We are talking about the Chutus now, we are talking the early Kadambas, then later Kadambas and etc. What is the presence of these so well-cultured nomadic tribes? This is how Shamba Joshi puts it. Normally, sir, when we talk about the nomadic, we think that they were not settlers, they were not yet settled, and later the agricultural layer came after all the prehistoric layers, and the culture started to flourish. Here, he is telling either it is a movement of the North Indian religious cults to South India or whatever, because he agrees on the Arya Dravida framework. Even Moraes also agrees on the Arya Dravida framework, which many scholars are questioning now. I'm not going to that domain, but why, while writing, how is that, okay, to make my question very simple, how is that suddenly a Vedic culture occurs in Karnataka? A Brahminical, so-called Brahminical culture occurs in Karnataka. how the mention of the Ashwamedha, etc., starts to coming into the epigraphical records. Finally, he says one interesting thing about the Shaivas, it is there, but not able to quote it right now, on the religious survey part in this thesis, that there was a phallus worship. Later the cult of Rudra came, and later it was merged with the Shiva cult. Therefore, phallus of worship was one, Shishnadeva in the Rigveda, and second one is the Shiva in the, Rudra and the Shiva. My question is, he is taken from R.G. Bhandarkar, Shaivism and Vaishnavism book. My question is, how solid such a hypothesis, which we are agreeing many a times, is to continue even after 70 or 80 years of the publication of such studies. Such studies I am telling. I am not only talking about this one, Moraes. Many of our whatever called the Dharmika Adhyayana, that is religious studies people, they are taking this as a very standard, that phallus worship and all other things as a standard. Because if these things are taken, this is my last line, if these frameworks are taken as a standard, whatever I have told, and within that framework, that is within that compound, if you are filling the new research data, then the structure of history will be the same. It may be in a different style of English you may write according to 21st century, but the basic structure given by our good researchers, but with a kind of a colonial background, what Dr. Rajaram was telling, Hegde was telling, is to be questioned. In that sense, though the data given by Moraes is good, we appreciate it, we use it, but many of the intellectual framework, what he has given, I have mentioned one or two in my paper when I submit to Mythic Society, I will write it in detail, has to be questioned with reverence. I am not talking like any attacking or anything. It is only with an intellectual curiosity we should do that. Then only, sir, we may get that light of departure from existing way of writing Indian historiography in general and Karnataka historiography in particular. I thank you one and all. Namaste.